Hey everyone, I've got two things for you today. One, hack your basic dress pattern and add some frills to make a beautiful summer dress. Two, you can download a pattern that's already made for you to add those same frills to your dress. Let's get started. I'm going to be doing a size 10 girls dress. It is a shift dress with a ruffle at the bottom. The back is fairly simple. It's going to have a center back zipper and a ruffle across the bottom. The sleeve has two pieces, somewhat like a tulip sleeve, but it will not be overlapped. It will have ruffles sewn in the seams there. So I have the sleeves and the ruffles. I also have the front. Here's how I made the faux tulip sleeve. Draw a curved line from the back side seam to the front sleeve cap. Do not curve it too high at the center because that part will be cut out. Then fold the sleeve in half, matching the side seams. Cut off the bottom to make a petal shape to make the front match the back. Mark off the width of your finished ruffle, 1.5 to 2 inches. For a woman's dress, it could be 2 inches or more. Mark it along both cutting lines. And piece 1 should still extend past the center notch. You don't want your ruffle to end up at the center notch. You want it to end up on the front. Cut the sleeve apart, discarding the ruffle portion along the bottom. Add seam allowance to the cut edges. Cut strips for the ruffles. I used 1.4 times the length of the curved edge, so piece 1 might measure 11 inches, and I did that times 1.4. Piece 2 might have a curved edge of 8 inches, I did that times 1.4, and those were the lengths that I cut the ruffles for the sleeve. Cut 2 of each so that you have for the left and the right sleeve. Make sure you add seam allowance to the width of the ruffle. So if you drew on a ruffle of 2 inches, add seam allowance of at least 1/4 inch on each side for the hem and for the seam. Step 1 in sewing it together is to sew the gathering stitch and then gather the ruffles to the separate pieces. Then, after you've sewed the ruffles on, sew the front and back of the sleeve together, and it looks like an overlap tulip sleeve, but it's actually all sewn together in one piece. Let's hack the skirt for a crisscross effect. It's much easier to cut the skirt on a fold than to cut an asymmetrical skirt, so I have directions for altering it after you cut it. First, decide on the width of the skirt ruffle around the bottom. If the ruffle is cut 9 inches wide, you want to shorten the back skirt by 8 inches to leave a 1/2 inch seam allowance for each piece. But for the front skirt, you need extra seam allowance for that curved seam up across, so shorten the front skirt by only 7 1/4 inches. That gives you an extra 3/4 to 1 inch in there for the curved seam. After cutting, open up your skirt so you can cut the asymmetrical curve. Draw a curve on the front skirt. Start 3/4 inch out from the bottom. You don't need that extra seam allowance right on that side. Curve up gradually toward the center and then curve up more steeply at the end to 1/2 or 2/3 of the skirt length, wherever you want the top of your ruffle to end. Cut the skirt apart on the curve and you can mark off the quarters, the fourths of the skirt as you do that. For the bottom piece, you will cut off that long taily end so it only goes 3/4 of the way across. Now let's match up the pieces. Overlap the pieces by double the seam allowance, a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so you overlap it by 1 inch, and then make marks across that seam allowance to show where your two pieces will line up when you're sewing the seam. Take the pieces apart and finish the markings, and also make sure you have each quarter marked for gathering the ruffle along the bottom piece and also along the curved edge. To cut your ruffles, you will first measure the full width of the skirt, for example, maybe 30 inches across the front skirt. You want 2 ruffles that are 1.5 times that length, 1 for the back and 1 for the front with the curved piece. The other ruffle for the very bottom of the front piece will just be 3/4 that length because that piece only goes 3/4 of the way across the skirt. That will be sewn on the bottom piece of the skirt. To sew it together, you'll gather 1 ruffle to the back skirt, gather the long ruffle to the upper curved skirt, matching the notches, divided into 4ths evenly, gather the shorter ruffle to the bottom piece, and there you'll have 3 sections. Sew the pieces together along the curve, matching the markings, and your skirt is finished. Hi, I'm Nita, owner of Nita Patterns. I began to draft patterns for fun, and people wanted my patterns, so that's how my pattern company began. I'm happy to help you with questions on how to fit your patterns, on suggestions for new styles, new patterns to create. Please let me know in the comments what you would like to see from me.